In the pro wrestling world, WCW-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated podcasters who investigate these infamous storylines are members of an elite squad known as 10 Bell Pod. These are their stories.
How's the Goldberg title run gonna end?
Try to spoil Foley winning the WWF title.
The buyout from AOL and Time Warner.
Georgia Dome show on Monday Nitro.
Good Lord, wrestling has been plagued by versions of this particular storyline for a long time.
So now we are into one of the most highly scrutinized angles in pro wrestling history.
Kevin Nash defeated Terry Funk to become the WCW commissioner.
2000 Bash at the Beach.
Fingerpoke of Doom. You know what, guys? All this talk of late 90s wrestling has just gotten me in my childhood feels, and it's got me thinking, and as you guys know, I'm a big trading card fan and seller and everything, and all this talk of late 90s made me realize, maybe I need to invest in one of the biggest stars of the 90s and really go hard and buy as many trading cards as I possibly can. And you will never guess who I got a sweet deal on all his trading cards. You have no idea.
Michael Jordan?
No.
Shaq?
No, not Shaq. Not as big as Jordan or
Scottie
Shaq.
Pippen.
But, that would have been a better purchase.
Barkley.
I don't. Also another better person, but not necessarily him. Think big. Think big.
Tall. The fridge.
Big. Yeah. That's from the 80s, Tyler. And wrong. You were closer with sports. It's basketball. Okay. One of the biggest 90s stars.
Oh, Elijah Wan.
That would have been very good for the money I paid. No.
Dennis Rodman.
Really sure. That would create synergy because we are talking about the NWO, but and that crossover fan. So yeah, I probably could have sold that better on eBay than the guy I got. He at least won championships. I dropped $1,000 on Patrick Ewing cards, guys.
Who?
Oh no.
Yeah,
he was in Space Jam. Tyler. He's an actor from Space Jam.
He's one of the guys that gets his talent sucked. Okay.
He went and played for the Magic after that.
And the Supersonics. I got some really good Supersonics cards as well, if anybody's interested. Make sure you check me out on eBay. I have every Patrick Ewing card available on Manscout's eBay. The links are in all of my bios. Please save me from my stupid financial decisions.
Well, Scott did save WCW, so maybe he can help you out drawing some money to your Patrick Ewing collection.
Well, he postponed the inevitable at WCW, so let's do the same for Jake.
Yeah, there we go. Just don't bring in Vince Russo to help you move him, and you'll be all right, Jake.
Vince Russo, you're a New York guy. If you want all Patrick Ewings, there you go. That's all I need to be. I'm going to bring Vince Russo in, guys, and that's going to turn out far better than probably some of the things that are going to happen on this episode today.
The second you post an Instagram reel where Nick attacks you to try to get more views on your cards, I'll know we're in trouble. It's time to pull out.
All right. Hello, and welcome to 10 Bell Pod. I'm Nick, joined by Tyler Wood.
Thank you, sick Nick Alexander.
Yeah.
Where Nick will cut his life in two pieces.
Tyler is coming in with the assist on the Jake intro this week. We are joined by the master of the figure s'more leg lock and the RK oath, the Man Scout Jake Batty.
There you go. That's two of them. I like that. It's far better than whatever Tyler gets. Let's keep that happening, guys. Let's not dip below that level of quality.
So the first couple of episodes on Scott, they're kind of fun. This is the hard show. This is the difficult show as we wrap up season 3 of 10 Bell and the story of Scott Hall. Since Scott jumped the guardrail on Nitro and started the Monday Night Wars in May of 96, WCW had just been crushing WWF in the ratings, but now we're in 1998, and that's about to stop. Bischoff was buying up like every 80s and 90s wrestling star in the business, expecting Vince to just be like, oh, shucks, guess I quit. But instead, Vince comes back with Stone Cold, DX, The Rock, Beaver Cleavage. Meanwhile, WCW just kind of stuck with the NWO, which at this point is becoming a little meh. We spoke last episode about how Starrcade 97 was like the perfect exit point, beginning, middle, end, greatest story in wrestling ever told. Instead, they go from this elite group of Hall, Nash, Hogan, Giant, X-Pac to now, and no hate to Bryan Adams, but now fucking Crush is in the NWO, and it's like, who the fuck cares? So while the official turning point and plummet isn't until January 4th, 99, and the whole Foley and Fingerpoke of Doom shit, the fight's about to get real even and the landslide's over. When we last left off on Scott Hall, he had won World War III, earning himself a title shot before we headed into the Starrcade 97 that just didn't work for me, brother. However, Scott's going to start off 1998 strong when he and Nash picked up the tag team titles once again, beating the Steiner brothers on January 12th, 98's Nitro. There's all kinds of ref bumps, NWO interference. But one thing they start to establish during this match is there's possibly some disturbance within the NWO force, especially when Macho Man is flipping shit. He tries to elbow drop Nash, but he actually misses when Nash rolls out of the way. He hits Rick Steiner and gives the Outsiders the win. But Nash saw it. He's like, hey, why I oughta? So there's like some riffs in the NWO here.
Yeah, they're trying to put dissension in the NWO itself, and it's almost like there's going to be this feud that's happening within the NWO, and there's like that discussion of, the NWO is going to have their own thing. Well, maybe they fight each other, or maybe they don't, and what's that look like? Also, too, I know this was the kind of the beginning of the breakup of the Steiner brothers, and God, did this break my heart as a child. I'll never forget the promo. I think it was like shortly after this, where Scott said in a promo, goes, we all know who the older brother is, but we also know who the bigger brother is. And Rick's like, get out of here. Like, knock that off. Get to the back, Scott. Quit being an asshole. Yeah, I remember this vividly. I'm still pretty invested at this time. I'm still checking in. But yeah, since the 97 Starrcade, it's like, okay, well, now the NWO is going to fight each other now. Cool. What's on Raw?
What do you guys feel like was the peak iteration of the NWO? Like, what was the perfect combination of members?
I think when they added the Giant, that was like, that's too many. It kind of just felt like guys are just jumping on to pile on. Like, as a kid, I'm like, oh, he can't beat him, so he's just going to join him like fucking Kevin Durant or something. Like, oh, if he gets a ring, it doesn't matter, That's what it kind of felt like to me. I was kind of like, all right, well, whatever. But yeah, I think the three, like even Ted being there and being the money was kind of weird.
Yeah.
It would have been just better. It just would have been better, like, I think with Hulk, Hall, Nash, and then Bischoff. I feel like you could have done, all kinds of things. But I get if you're going to take over a company, you need an army. So you need more members, and you got to, who's going to be the next member? So that's captivating television. But once you've kind of run through everybody, you still need to keep people that are going to fight this thing. But then you get people that are in it, they're going to fight later on. Like when Macho Man was a part of the NWO and then fought the NWO, and then they had the split, and then the Wolfpack, and we'll get all that very soon.
I feel like you mentioned the addition of Ted DiBiase, like going back and looking at this as someone who didn't watch at the time, it's really weird for them to have someone who's a kayfabe rich person funding something when it's supposed to be like blurring the lines of what's real, not real. So like that, it didn't fit well to me.
No. He was able to fund the NWO because he was ripping off the welfare system in Mississippi, Tyler. That's why.
Family tradition.
That's why the NWOs were the biggest heels of the time. They were ripping off the Mississippi welfare system, and that's how they were funded.
That's why Brett Favre joined later. I see.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember last episode, Larry Zbyszko beat Eric Bischoff in a match that would allow him to face Scott, and that would happen at January 24th, sold out. This is a match we brought up on Dusty Rhodes Part 2. I would assume we talked about it on Louis Spicolli way back when. They're both involved here. And this is when Dusty turns on WCW, hits Larry with an elbow, giving him a DQ win. And obviously Dusty is like an all-time great. He's deeply woven in the fabric of WCW and NWA, but he's 53 here. He's been commentating for the last 8 years, so who gives a fuck? But if I keep saying who gives a fuck with every new member that joins during this episode, I'm going to be saying it every 5 minutes. So just know that every person who joins, there's a heavily implied who gives a fuck.
Yeah, and I remember seeing this and being like, who gives a fuck? But at the same time, too, I didn't know Dusty's like history. Like when we did the Dusty's episode and we talked about this, I'm like, oh yeah, this was a big deal. But when I was a kid, I didn't know how big of a deal Dusty Rhodes was. But then like a good wrestling fan, I went back and looked upon his history and realized who he was, because that's what wrestling fans do, is they go back into history and do homework and be like, hey, I like wrestling. Let's go see if there's more wrestling out there. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of it that happened in the past. Why not watch that and enjoy that? And then I know about that. Unlike some wrestling fans are like, nothing happened before Nexus. So, fuck it. Let's keep watching whatever's on Impact this week.
Well, first of all, to call me an Impact fan is the most insulting thing you've ever done to me, Jake. And second of all, I'm missing out on some of these like classic 80s and 90s matches, but that's because I'm watching Tracy Smothers beat the shit out of people in brawls in the ICP Federation over and over. I'm watching the gyms.
I love that I just passively aggressive said something and you knew immediately, oh no, Jake is aggressively talking about me. Like I was just vaguely talking about you and maybe several thousand or millions of people out there that have Twitter accounts that want to yell at me about stuff. But you were like, no, Jake is personally yelling at me. I shall respond. I appreciate you. And this is why you've completed this whole circle on 10 Bell Podcast.
Sorry, muscle memory there. My apologies.
So the Outsiders lost the title back to the Steiner brothers on the February 9th episode of Nitro, setting up Super Brawl 8. There, Scott Steiner would have a 33 1/3% chance of turning on his brother Rick, throwing up the Too Sweet, and giving the tag titles to his new stable buddies, the NWO. At 98's Uncensored, Scott finally got his World War III Promise World title shot, taking on Sting. And constant interference during this match, good bit of false finishes. I would have liked to see Scott get a title run. Like, if they're going to split the NWO up, why not use this? Scott can carry half of the NWO versus Hogan, who's mad he has the belt, yada yada.
That don't work for me, brother. That don't work for me.
But Sting wins, and then he hits Dusty with some suck it chops, which is very out of character for Sting. And I also always hate it when the WCW guys did the suck it chop. Like, just get your own thing, bro.
So, Nick, you said that you think Scott could have held the world title here for a little bit, and it would have made sense. What mess do you think that would have created backstage if he had? And would you look at it differently, too, if it was only like a month that he got to keep it?
Politically, Scott, I don't think gave a fuck either way. Like, he very much pin me, pay me mentality. Hogan may have got salty. You go back and forth on exactly how much he used the creative control and stuff. I don't think Nash would have cared either. But a month would have been very weird. It would have felt like more like a transitional thing to drop it to Scott so that Hogan didn't have to beat Sting or something like that. It would have felt that way even if it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think Nash would have been adamant about not getting it because he's like, fuck, I got to put this on my carry-on? Like, I gotta lug this shit around. I just got done with the Winged Eagle weighs far less than this hunk of tin. Please, for the love of God. Is this going to increase my t-shirt sales? No. Then how about no title run? I can already hear him answering that question in a Q&A right now the same exact way.
The next night on Nitro, March 16th, 98, sponsored by Burst Gum. I don't know if you guys remember Burst Gum, but it exploded when you bit into it. They're down in Panama City for spring break, and apparently Scott had spring broke a little too much when he showed up, allegedly fucked up. So Scott never wrestled drunk. He saved that for after. And if they did have a match plan here, it was pulled because all he did was like 2 promos. And I mean, don't show up to work drunk probably. But the promos went fine. Either way, it's going to be the months of issues leading up to this incident that may have happened. That's going to get Scott sent off to rehab.
And this is why I don't drink on the road. There is a zero tolerance in my life because I've had issues with alcohol. It has crept up in my personal life and in my free time. I'm mitigating that, and I'm taking stock in that and pulling even that back. Like sometimes in my free time, I'm not like completely hardcore, like not drinking or only drinking once every 6 months like I was. I'm definitely drinking a lot more because the road is tough. It's hard and it's difficult, and you need to let off steam, especially when you work in a highly political backstage area of live television and you're constantly like, we have to take care of this right now. This is the most important thing. And that's how you run around your entire week. So being inebriated in your free time is sometimes necessary, or is the only coping mechanism if you're not big into meditation or other things, or trading cards, like I've come to find has been a little bit of a release for me and fights some of those addictions, even though that's kind of an addiction as well. But part of the reason I have zero tolerance on the road is because that's where I work. Once I leave the house and I go to the airport, I am on the clock for All Elite Wrestling. And, I can't be going to a airport bar, having a couple drinks, landing, still being buzzed, and then get behind a rental car where it has my company's name attached to it. And I can't be like hanging out at the hotel bar, having one too many drinks, or getting too many drinks and forgetting to hit my bar tab. Or wandering at the hotel, and then hotel employees get questions about, like, this guy was an asshole when he was drunk, and we had to lead him back to his room, and, like, they see me wearing all AEW stuff, and it always happens where it's like, okay, we'll just have one drink to celebrate this. And one drink, is never enough the next time, and the next time, and the next time. And I'm just not built that way to just like, oh, I only have one drink at this particular time. It has to be no drinks, or it will turn into all of the drinks. And people that have addiction problems, that's how it is. It's you either gotta have the hardest boundaries in the world and stick with them, or it will just get out of control slowly but surely. That demon will just slowly poke its way through until it is just that is all you know, and that's what your life is defined by, and that's what you go through your day just looking for every day, is like, how can I get another drink, or can I just finish this work so I can go have a drink? I don't care about the work, I just want it to be done so I can go have a drink. And that's how it snowballs, and that's how it happens. That's why you have to have hard rules with it and stay by them.
We got to get you smoking some weed, Jake.
But same thing, when I'm like, I gotta hurry up and get done with all this so I can get high.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's just going to be replaced with something else. And it's like buying in a trading card breaks was the intensity that I was doing that for a while on the road. Like that was the thing that replaced drinking for me. Like buying into a break, like that same intensity is where it was. There's always these addictions, and you got to recognize, you're going to have a vice that's going to get you through everything on the road. You just got to make sure that vice doesn't destroy you. Right now it's trading cards, but even that financially, like, it's probably not good for me, and I have to find that next thing. What that next thing is, I don't know. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. Maybe it's talking to people and hanging out with some of my really awesome coworkers. I don't know. Or maybe hanging out with some of my shitty coworkers and laughing about them behind their back. I don't know. I don't know what that thing is, but vices can really get out of control really fast. And if you are not cognizant of that existing, and that being a thing, that's where the danger is. And Scott Hall, as wonderful and as smart as he is, as we've detailed in 2 podcasts already, even he didn't see it.
Yeah, Scott's starting to go down that road. So for most of Scott's life, he was pretty straight and narrow, with his drug of choice being the gym and having a sweet mustache. He did smoke a little weed from time to time. The drinking and the painkillers didn't start until his AWA days, when he met his old pal Kurt Hennig, who told him that the bar is where most of the business gets done. Scott started doing the extracurriculars to be one of the boys, because this is back when men were men. You dealt with your problems with a few pills, some shots, constructing a highway as part of the New Deal, getting some strange, irrigating some farmland, and finishing the day off with beers like a goddamn man. None of this pussy-ass vidya games and hair braiding like Kenny Omega does. So Scott went from the squeaky clean gym guy. Fast forward, he's laying in a bed asking Shawn Michaels if he's still alive, take another pill. Fast forward to WCW, Scott's demons are now affecting his work.
Nothing related to the Kiss Demon.
No, Dale Torborg had no effect on Scott's work whatsoever. Like zero, the absolute. Even the real demon himself, Gene Simmons, definitely had no effect on Scott Hall whatsoever.
Before we get going, I do just want to ask, wait, what was up with the FDR references there?
I was trying to think of manly stuff, and I thought, the paving a highway as part of reconstructing America after the Great Depression.
When you're American, you learn about American history, and you go back and you learn it because you're an American. That's one of the things you do is you read a book about something. If you're like, hey, I live in America, and these presidents, they get elected. What about the prior presidents? How about I do some research into them and then look them up? That's what people do, Tyler.
Fair point.
So Scott's out the door for one of his 12 rehab trips. And while he's gone, the NWO started splintering into different factions. By the time he comes back, you're going to have NWO Hollywood, you're going to have NWO Wolfpack.
Which NWO Wolfpack is the coolest shit of all fucking time. Like, hands down. That entrance music, yeah. I mean, K-Dog, Kevin Nash, and then like Sting's like, heck yeah, I want to get into this fun, brother. And then red and black, that was my school colors. And obviously this is big during like my senior and junior year. So instead of like the New World Order, I should have sent a cease and desist to myself because we did the PWO, Preston World Order shirts for our football team one year. That was pretty sweet. That was pretty cool.
While Scott did pop back up for a couple house shows, his official return is May 17th, 1998, Slamboree, and the main event when NWO Hollywood's The Giant and NWO Hollywood's potential recruit, Sting, face the Outsiders. And Scott does this cheeky little drunk stumble out of the curtain, which I thought was funny. He returns to a big pop, but the homecoming celebration would be cut short when Scott and Dusty turned on Nash, breaking up the Outsiders, losing the titles, joining NWO Black and White, and this is probably the first quality NWO swerve in like a calendar year.
And I always felt this was because, like, if Scott goes over to Wolfpack, what's the point of the NWO Hollywood? They eventually get to that, and then they make NWO Hollywood meaning nothing, but if I'm Hulk Hogan, I'm keeping Scott next to me because if we don't have Scott here, then I got to take all the bumps. So I'm gonna need Scott here to be the workhorse. I know he's had a sabbatical and he's dealing with some shit, but I need somebody to do all the work here.
So at that time in NWO Hollywood, who was number 2 in command to Hogan?
Scott, right?
Oh, I'd say
or Bischoff, so. Maybe.
Or while Scott was out, who was like number 2 or like his general? When Scott comes over, he's obviously number 2, but like, who is he knocking Buff Bagwell down or like
Steiner?
Oh,
Scott Steiner.
Yeah,
Scott Steiner.
Yeah, he needed to be over there.
Yeah, and I remember they did like vignettes where like, oh, Steiner, since now you're part of the NWO Hollywood, we're gonna put you in Hollywood movies, and they had like they put Steiner like reading for roles, and they were clearly like making it up for a pre-tape, having Scott read these lines, and it's like he was playing some gangster, like, what do you mean all the money's not there? It was like terrible, but it was terrible because it was Scott Steiner, and it was amazing.
Scott Steiner, movie roles. Huh? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a shit. I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. Yeah, Big Papa Pump says, look at you, look at me. May the force be with me. Fuck you. I'm not gonna give you the force for Big Papa Pump. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that, that's muscle. That's muscle, I'm flexing my biceps. That's what I do when I fuck your wife. You talking to me? Huh? Ain't no crying in baseball. E.T. phoned home. How about E.T. go home and I bury your ass out there in the ring? I'm gonna read for Borat. Very nice. Huh? Very nice, my wife. Huh? Life is like a box of chocolates. You only got 33 of them in there, and then when you're done, and don't got no more. With great power comes great muscles, Peter. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Big Papa Pump. Yeah, fuck The Rock. That was easy.
So the next night, Scott walks out to officially join the NWO Black and White while they awaited Sting's answer to join them, which was a hard no. And then they sow the seeds for Sting joining the Wolfpack when Nash saves him from a giant beating, like from the giant, and also, I guess, a big one. But the giant was going to fight Sting.
Everything's hard when it's around Hulk Hogan, right? Hard no, hard R.
Hard dick.
That's true.
Because you saw, now that might have been Kemperling and Deuce. We need to check the sex tape. I mean, it's a few short seconds, but it's a Hulk Hogan sex tape.
I watch weekly, so any questions?
I bet you do. I have no doubt.
That's taking up the time I should be watching old wrestling matches.
Yes, it does. It probably does. This is why you could barely list off NWO champions, but you know every aspect of the Hulk Hogan sex tape.
I can quote it by heart.
Oh, I'm stuffed like a pig.
Well done.
July 6, 98, we get to the infamous Georgia Dome show on Monday Nitro. There, Hall was picked by Hollywood Hogan to end Goldberg's undefeated streak. You see, WCW had booked Goldberg on an undefeated streak. At this point, I believe it was 106-0, or a combined 9 minutes of ring time, thus making Goldberg think that this shit is real and that he's such a special boy that he doesn't have to give anything back to the industry for the next 25 years. Like, imagine if it's still real to me, damn it, guy shaved his head and did a bunch of steroids. Goldberg.
Dude, I have so many stories about Goldberg doing a private signing recently. I don't know if I can share all of them on air.
Patreon.
We'll definitely put him there. As I've explained before, behind a paywall, I give 0 fucks. So it will be behind a paywall, maybe a Q&A episode. I've got all the dish over there. I will have all the tea to spill. But for right now, let's talk about this sorry-ass dome show that has drawn less than AEW at Wembley Stadium. Continue on with this show.
So either way, all that stood between Goldberg and a WCW title shot was Scott Hall. And if we focus in on the dates for a second, Scott turned on Kevin in May, and now we're talking about a match in July. If you watch this match, the commentators are like, hey, this is the first time we've seen Scott in a minute, and he was back in rehab once again, because he's going through a lot of shit during this time especially. Louis Spicolli, who Scott had been working with, had just died in February. Scott was going through a divorce. That unchecked PTSD from the gunshot is still rattling around in there. So his coping mechanisms are out of control. But he's back now, and he's facing Goldberg. This match is about 5 minutes long, and there's 4 botches in it. Scott hasn't had 4 botches in his entire career to this point, but, who's next? Hogan's next because LOL, Cena wins. Setting up the main event of Goldberg versus Hollywood, a vexation more difficult to comprehend than the paradox of the quantum superposition posed by Schrodinger's cat. Between Goldberg and Hogan, who would lose when the irrejobbable force met the unjobbable object? Either way, Goldberg wins.
You have all this talent, just you use it on this. It's amazing. It's amazing, Nick. Wonderful writer.
Yeah, don't go back to stand-up and dilute your talent, okay? Like, just stay right here, write cute little intros for me, stay out of the way when I berate Tyler for not knowing wrestling history, and then come up with soliloquies like that.
So this is probably the last time we'll get to speak about this match, as Hulk Hogan is immortal, and Goldberg will refuse to job to death unless he trades his scythe in for a stun gun. But this is one of those heavily debated WCW choices to do this on free TV. What do you guys think about this?
This is a memory in my life, for sure. Like, I will never forget watching this show. I definitely wasn't switching the channels that night. It looked incredible on television. I get why they did it. They probably had a shitload of comps because, Turner Broadcasting is there. And trust me, I know every time we run Atlanta, we have to give out a ton of comps. I'm sure everybody and their brother, so... You could have filled up half the Georgia Dome with probably Turner executives that want to bring their whole families there because WCW is the hottest ticket at the time. I'm not too beholden to this because this is definitely a benchmark and something that you're going to talk about. And as a company on television, you're going to tout. Like, hey, we just ran the Georgia Dome. We had X amount of people there. We drew this monster rating. That's something that's going to get advertisers interested in your product. When you are kind of I guess, on the slide right now to WWE, who is running Worcester, Mass Township Hall and running Raw. Like, you can position yourself as the bigger company by doing something like this. Eric Bischoff gets a lot of flack for putting this on free TV. Personally, I think this was ingenious. This was a swing. You hit a home run. Did you win the game? No, but you sure as heck got yourself in the best position to win. So I don't fault him for putting this on TV. Now a build can be made for the rematch, and we could build to that. Or Sting could wrestle Goldberg, and then we got some of these great things. Oh, wait, and none of that happened? Oh, that's what I thought. Never mind. We had no plan after this. That's what the issue is. It's not that this was a bad idea. It's the things that happened after it were probably the bad ideas.
Hogan and Goldberg, they are the two hottest properties there at the time. And it's a great preamble for what is getting ready to happen, because it kind of just feels like this was supposed to be the peak. Like, looking back on it, this should have been in some ways the peak of WCW. And in some ways it was, and in other ways it just did not fully, I think, live up to the hype that, like, Goldberg versus Hogan should have given. And Hulk Hogan's been failing to fully deliver on matches for a very long time, so it's nothing surprising.
I like the match, though. The match is good, considering you're in there with a guy who, as Nick mentioned in his long, detailed, incredible monologue, that, like, Goldberg had all of 9 minutes total wrestling in 100 matches. I mean, this was the first time I saw, like, Goldberg actually have a match that was longer than 5 minutes. I mean, Hulk pulled that out of him. Hulk did that. Hulk know how to do that. So, like, everything about this, executed, agree with, would sign off again even today. It's everything after it. It's probably, because it's like, I vividly remember this this was amazing for WCW. But then after that, it just gets murky. Much like, 97 Starrcade.
I think I'm definitely looking at it through shit-tinted glasses, too, because I do not like Goldberg. I have not liked Goldberg since I started watching. I cannot fucking stand that man.
Oh, he doesn't care, because want to know why?
He doesn't give a fuck about fans.
He has giraffe money, Tyler.
He owns a giraffe?
He has giraffe money. He has a giraffe, Tyler. Do you think he cares what is being said on this podcast right now? He cares not. He cares not, because he owns a fucking giraffe.
I look forward to him being hired by AEW and us having to scrub all mention from any episode we've done about Goldberg.
Once again, do you think he cares? He has giraffe money.
See, that's the thing. He has enough money he shouldn't care, but Goldberg's such a piece of shit that, ask Bret Hart, that the second he could ruin your life, he would.
On the July 13th Nitro, Hulk blamed Hall for Goldberg taking his belt, just like someone like Hogan to blame a Cuban American for their shortcomings instead of holding themselves accountable.
And you're supposed to be one of the good ones. Brother.
Scott and Hulk get a little chippy, setting up a match for later that night where Bischoff would be the special guest referee. The Disciple gets involved in this match, which is the coolest Brutus ever was. Like, he should have rocked this look his whole career. But this match ends in no contest when DDP runs in, Nash runs in, Brutus hops in. So Nash is there to save Scott to get their friendship back on track. And Hall too sweets Kev for the assist. But when Nash goes to set up Hogan for the powerbomb, Hall swerve bros us all, attacks Kev to prove his loyalty to NWO Black and White. And Scott says over and over in promos that he's doing this for the money. If you remember that one promo he cut about how NWO Black and White had dental included with their insurance, had a 401k contribution that was up to 6% matched, which is, crazy. And, the Wolfpack's basically a startup at this point, so they can't really, compete in this job market with Scott Hall. They can fucking sign Disco Inferno, but you're not going to get a Scott Hall when those benefit packages, are on the table.
I don't want to shit talk, but I heard Wolfpack, it was a 1099 deal, which is, my goodness.
Yeah, you're going to have to save money to pay taxes at the end of the year. I mean, you got to keep a whole separate account for that, and an account for the percentage.
Keep track of what you get paid in cash.
Also, too, you got to keep receipts. You got to claim all your expenses, too. It's really tough. It's really not easy.
So July 16th, 98, Thunder opens with an interview of Kevin Nash that was filmed after this Nitro. He tells Tenay that Hall has some personal problems. He doesn't know why he's turning on Kev, or I guess himself, yada yada. About halfway through Thunder, they play the interview again. Scott comes out to address it and insult Nash, so the Hall-Nash feud is on. On the July 20th episode of Nitro, Hall, with the Giant, won the WCW tag team titles for Scott's sixth time, beating Sting and Nash after some interference with Brett, who was, I think, mad at Sting at the time. But by the end of July, Scott had been arrested for getting too drunk and too handsy with a woman at a hotel. Adding to it, the internet was growing, the dirt sheets were paving the way for shitty clickbait articles, and people were getting their hands on these kinds of stories, so Bischoff decides to work with it. So Scott had been on and off TV throughout the year. And again, we're going to jump a little time here with Scott gone. On the September 10th Thunder, J.J. Dillon explains the absence of Scott by saying he's been lounging around, playing golf, tanning on the beach. But this Sunday, he has a match against Conan, Orale Holmes. Night.
I would pay a tremendous amount of money to hear J.J. Dillon say, "Orale Holmes." I would give him all the Patrick Ewing cards that I have to hear J.J. Dillon say, "Orale Holmes."
So later that night in the main event, Scott runs in during a Kevin Nash match and hits him with a slapjack. He's not falling down drunk, but he is like a little wobbly here, and he's just like a little bit off, and not too much is made out of it, but I think it's enough for like fans and dirt sheets to think, has this motherfucker been sipping that scissor? So now we are into one of the most highly scrutinized angles in pro wrestling history. So a few things. Nash said on the Click podcast, don't pause this to go listen. He said that Scott was basically fine with the angle. Scott himself said that it was probably in bad taste, but he was just there to take the money. I don't care. Also note, Scott was never actually drunk during any of this. Not while he was doing it. And also, as much hate as this angle gets, WWE did the suicidal alcoholic bit with the Road Warriors. They had Jerry Lawler pour a bottle of Jack all over Jake the Snake, one of the most notoriously downward spiraling people in the business. And if we're taking time to like clutch our pearls and think about the kids, Scott's being like a stumbling, bubbling idiot, throwing his career away on TV. He's not winning. He's not strong. Did pro wrestling need any of these stories? Probably not. But is this worse than Stone Cold showing how cool it is to shotgun 9 beers in a row, like a raging alcoholic?
I thought you were about to say, is it any worse than Stone Cold breaking into someone's house when they're armed with a pistol?
Too.
And you kind of you scratch the surface, but good Lord, wrestling has been plagued by versions of this particular storyline for a long time. I can think of 2 instances where CM Punk had a thing. I think he had a thing with Jericho where Jericho was calling out Punk's family's real life history of alcohol problems, and then Punk and Jeff Hardy where Punk just shit all over Jeff Hardy for not being able to stay sober, which is relevant 10, 15 years later. I like this angle, personally. I like it when some real life stuff gets woven in as long as everybody on board is okay with it. And it's probably not in the best of taste, like it's been said, but I think there are ways to go through stuff like this and have it come out with a more positive message than this really did. Because this is kind of just hey, don't forget who your friends are. But nothing really with substance abuse fully being tackled. But overall, I like it. I like that Scott was willing to take some of his personal life and put it into a wrestling angle. I'm always appreciative whenever a wrestler chooses to do that. And I think sometimes it leads to better art when they do it.
Yeah, and as Tyler said, as long as everybody's involved is cool with it, and the person that it's about is I have no problem portraying this aspect of me because this is who I am, and it's realistic, and it may get me to understand fully what I was going through. And you're talking about substance abuse, which is a personally harming thing. It's not that they're not doing an angle Scott's a domestic abuser and let's portray that on television, which wrestling has before. If you go back to Dirty White Boy and Dr. Tom Pritchard with the dirty white girl and that whole domestic angle.
Nydia,
so wrestling gets
Nydia and Jamie Noble.
Yep, wrestling gets even worse in that aspect. Let's tackle that issue for an angle. Those are bad taste because it's somebody else being harmed as opposed to somebody self-harming that says, "Hey, I don't have a problem portraying this side of me."
We definitely don't condone this behavior. Every other week or so on Patreon, you can hear Tyler explain history very drunk. So at 98's Fall Brawl, we're getting deep into it. So Scott starts the night by showing up drunk and throwing a drink into Conan's face while he's doing a bit for WCW.com. Later, Scott shows up for his match very drunk, carrying a drink to the ring. He's babysat by Vincent. He gets into the wrong ring since there are two set up for the War Games. He grabs a mic and Heenan says, he's about to do his Foster Brooks impersonation, who is a comedian from the 60s and 70s, best known for his portrayal for a lovable drunk in a nightclub performance and television programs. Just getting us all on the same page.
Strong as our passions were, the fire follicles and I were never caught doing anything illicit, immoral, or unsavory. We did them all, but we never were caught at it.
They wrestle the match. Scott's drinking during it, stumbling around. Conan eventually taps him, and Scott loses. But I think one of the most disturbing things about this angle, as far as aside from making someone actually going through this do it, it's how accurate Scott plays this role. If he was cartoony, silly, sloppy drunk, maybe people aren't as offended or whatever, but Scott's just too real with this shit. So moving this angle forward, Nash tries to give him some tough love on the mic. He finds Scott in a bar and beats that ass. Over the next few TVs, Hall is showing up kayfabe intoxicated. He's drinking during matches, stumbling around. He throws up on Bischoff. They even add a layer of reality here when real life friend but on screen enemy Kevin Nash comes out and tries to help Scott. Remember, they're in the middle of a full blown feud, so that makes it feel so real.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to Halloween Havoc 98, a top 10 greatest set design in the history of our sport. So Scott's still been technically tag champ during all of this, but they've been using NWO rules, they were calling it, but Freebird rules. So for a title defense, they subbed in Scott Steiner to pair up with the Giant, who lost the belts to Rick Steiner, who kind of won them by himself when Buff Bagwell turned on him. But without being there, Scott lost his tag title. Then we get to Hall Nash 1v1. Scott comes out with a drink in hand, stumbling around, but it was a ruse. He throws the drink in Kevin's face, revealing that he's sober. He beats down Kevin so bad that WCW officials come to check on him, so Scott cuts the old mid-match promo. But Kevin eventually makes a comeback. He smashes Hall with 2 jackknives before leaving and taking a count out because he didn't care about winning. He just wanted to beat some sense into Scott. And I think this match gets lumped in with the negativity surrounding this angle, but this match is great. It's great storytelling. It's well done. I'm a big fan of this match.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely one of the matches that is in my mind when I knew we were going to do the Scott Hall episode. I'm like, oh yeah, that match was pretty good. And anytime you can take a story like that and still incorporate it with good wrestling and tell a story like that, kudos to you. But nobody's going to replicate that match on the card. I mean, you're going to have somebody do all these amazing aerial things, but this is telling an actual story.
Yeah. Following Havoc, the angle was dropped because a high-ranking official from Turner was like, hey, what the fuck? Magically, just like that, Hall's sober again. Scott would get kicked out of NWO Hollywood after Scott Steiner took over and shoot him away. So Scott started calling himself the Lone Wolf, even though we all know he's actually a Starship Coyote.
Mm-hmm.
November 30th, 98, Hall needed a tag partner to face Steiner and Horse Hogan. And Kevin Nash, who had apparently forgiven Scott at this point, came in and the two won the match. So Hall and Nash are pals again, which takes us to Starrcade 98. When Hall, disguised as a security guard, used a cattle prod on WCW champ Goldberg during his title defense against Nash. Nash powerbombs that fucking mark and ends his 173 match winning streak. And this is another one of those things that the people out there hate about WCW.
Let me answer it the way Kev would answer it. How else was I going to stop that motherfucker? Like, I had to tase his ass. But at the same time, too, like, how's the Goldberg title run going to end? Like, it's got to end somehow. You got to have some sort of plan. I guess this is as good as any. Or you got to have him job to Hogan or take 3 power bombs. And then Kev puts his foot on his chest. Like, what do you want to do here?
Yeah, you can't shoot him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Goldberg would pitch it and be like, you can just shoot me, brother. It's okay. I'm tough. I got giraffe money. No bullet's going to stop me.
He'll no-sell that shit. He doesn't know how to sell in the first place.
I was in Universal Soldier 3, okay? Like, nothing's killing me.
Now we're in 99 and January 4th's Nitro, and we get 2 classic WCW oopsie daisies. First, they try to spoil Foley winning the WWF title, which accidentally sends over 500,000 people to the other station. Then we get to the Fingerpoke of Doom. If you don't know what that is, every wrestling YouTube channel has a video of them reading you the Wikipedia about it. Hulk Hogan pokes Nash, he lays down, and wins the title. On paper, I don't think the Fingerpoke of Doom is that bad. Like, this is a shitty, disrespectful thing for a Hill faction to do. It got go away heat, but it got heat. And I think the whole Jeff Jarrett thing from 2000 Bash at the Beach with Hogan is way worse than this, and it should be brought up way more.
Oh, absolutely. I 1000% agree. But I will say, like, seeing this happen, I was kind of very turned off. I think this was kind of like my last straw. I guess it's like, I don't have a problem with the Fingerpoke of Doom in that match. It's the stuff that always happens after it. Like most everything with WCW. That's why I can't crucify them on any of the things they did. It's what was the next thing? Yes, it's a great idea, but where do we go next? And you know where I learned to ask that question? From Eric Bischoff's podcast. And I feel like he still asks that question, where do we go next? And Hogan just says, this is where we go, brother. And he's like, okay, like that is a place. It may not be a place where we want to go.
Basically, he's going, Hogan's going, I'm winning? Okay, cool, it works. Yeah. Whatever the fuck it is, that's fine.
That works for me, brother.
Yeah, this one definitely did work for the old Hulkster, one of the best, you know.
After about 2.5 years, we're right back to square one with the fucking NWO.
Yeah, that's the problem. You just thought you start over. It was like Dallas, and all of a sudden she wakes up and the last season was a whole fucking dream. That's exactly what this was. Well,
you see, Jake, in wrestling, the story's never over.
You know what? If WCW would have came out in some sort of like media scrum after Starrcade 97 and said, you know, like the story's not done, that would have worked too.
Moving forward from here, Scott was about to have a pretty rough year. First off, he feuds with Goldberg, facing him in a ladder taser match at January 19th, sold out. He lost the match when Goldberg speared him, jackhammered him, and hit him with a stun gun. February 21st, Super Brawl 9, Scott beat Roddy Piper for the U.S. title, but soon after he suffered a foot injury that would put him out until October 99. November 8th, 99's Nitro, Scott beat Goldberg, Bret Hart, and Sid in a Texas Tornado ladder match to win the same U.S. title he had to forfeit while he was out. And then 2 weeks later on Mayhem, he beat Rick Steiner by forfeit for the TV title. 8 days later, Scott vacated the TV title when he and Nash played a little trash can basketball with it. Scott just had no chance against Kevin, who played D1 at Tennessee. And I'm no one to like critique Scott Hall, but his defensive stance was a little high. He was like leaning forward, and I think that's what caused him to bite on Kevin's jab step, leaving the bucket wide open for Nash to throw it down. So TV title right into the trash can.
And then immediately Kevin Nash walked over and punched his coach, because that's how Kevin Nash plays basketball.
While Jim Duggan did find it in a dumpster and hold the belt for 54 days, that was it for the TV title, once held by Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, and Disco Inferno. On December 13th, Nitro, Hall and Nash would beat the hilarious combination of Bret Hart and Goldberg for the tag titles, winning them for their 6th time together, but I think it's Scott's 7th. But soon after, Scott's hurt again, and he has to vacate all Held titles. To state the obvious, pro wrestling, the partying lifestyle, the road life was catching up to Scott, who's entering his early 40s here. His body's starting to go a little bit. And, he's not using some sort of like LeBron James hyperbaric chamber to prolong his longevity. It's a few drinks, a few pills, and then let's drive to Mobile or wherever the fuck. December 99, we get the formation of NWO 2000. And I thought it would be great if we all went around the table and told everyone our favorite memory of NWO 2000.
I actually have one.
Oh no!
I think it was like one of the nights they formed, or one night where they just kind of cleared the ring, and I think they drove a car down to the ring after they like just completely laid waste to everybody and everything. They decided to just slowly back the car out because they like, oh well, we beat everybody's ass like so fast. Now we still have 3 more minutes of TV time. What do? I don't know. Let's just drive this car backwards down the aisle while Kevin Nash is laying on the hood of the car, taking the bat and strumming it like it's a guitar, which is far more guitar playing than what Jeff Jarrett will ever do in his entire life. Because he doesn't know how to play a guitar, but he knows how to swing one.
That's true. I have just Googled it, and my favorite moment is the one where Kevin Nash defeated Terry Funk to become the WCW commissioner. That seems like a fun one. Because I was scrolling, I said, what the fuck is Terry Funk doing here? What the fuck was going on with WCW at the time? Like 5 years ago, it was the coolest fucking thing. And now what the fuck is going on over there?
It's one of the most epic fucking lead blows in sports history. Like all they had to do is not fuck it up, and they fucked it up. It's unbelievable.
This is what happens when you put Joe Mazzulla in charge. Like, this is what happens. That is a basketball reference, and I thought you would laugh a little bit more, Nick. I thought you would appreciate that.
I was in the middle of coughing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I expected more laugh from my Joe Mazzulla joke, which he's probably already been fired as Celtics head coach by now, by the time this podcast come out.
Do you guys get more frustrated, like, with the downfall of WCW, with the backstage politics and all that shit, or are you made more upset by, like, the buyout from AOL and Time Warner and how allegedly that's what put it down the shitter?
No, that's definitely what put it down the shitter, because you have so many people, like, in charge of it. If you just kept wrestling people in charge of wrestling, and you're just like, hey, we like these ratings, just keep doing your thing. Now, granted, they're going to do some shit that's you're going to have public releases and public apologies for, and then somebody's going to have to lose a job over it, because, we're trying to draw money like the olden days, brother. So there's that. But, yeah, like, when you start getting, like, corporate people in, and they start going, like, why did we spend money on this? This doesn't make sense. Well, you just spent money on this because it's cool? Oh, we can't do that. No. This guy wants how much? And we're going to pay it? No, I mean, this guy makes how much and we use him like once a month? Absolutely not. No. We're flying this guy in just to maybe get you? No, we're not going to do that. Like, it's in the same aspect the way George South always said about wrestling. Listen, if you had any sense, you wouldn't do it. If you thought about it long enough, you wouldn't take a bump. Because it's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. That's where you just gotta just fall. Don't sit there and think about taking a bump. Just fall. Just bump. Because the second you think about it, you're gonna get in your car and leave. Because that makes more sense than what you're about ready to do right now, which is take a bump from me.
And then we get to Scott's exit from WCW. And for a guy who helped make the company relevant, a guy who changed the industry as part of the company, it is not like a glamorous Jersey retirement. In February 2000, Scott faced Fit Finlay on a tour of Deutschland. And at the time, Hall was dating a lady whose uncle was like the president of TNT or something. She was a part of like the global Turner team. Anyway, they broke up. Depending on who's telling the story, she got jealous over Scott talking to an old German friend, because if you remember, Scott grew up in Germany. And she flipped shit, or Scott was on a bender, they argued, possibly even got physical. But either way, Scott said this was probably the beginning of the end for him in WCW, because she had like a lot of pull with the company. Top that off with Scott's issues. Add to it that Russo had just joined WCW, and he was refocusing the company to push new talent, which is actually on paper a good idea from, Russo. Scott would wrestle his last ever WCW match at Super Brawl 2000, February 20th, in a three-way dance with Jeff Jarrett and Sid for the WCW title. Scott does the trabajo. Just like that, he's gone. A year and a month later, WWF would own WCW. Scott was like, first of all, he got paid a lot, but Scott was also like very good with his money. He's not like that kind of wrestling story where he's, down and out financially. So he like wasn't in a big rush to get back, it seems here. He took a big chunk of time off before doing like 3 dates with ECW in November of 2000.
Hey, most just did that to hang out with Just Incredible. Like, Just Incredible's like, hey, you want to come in and do some spots with ECW? And he's like, okay, cool, I'll do that. I think there's even some sort of altercation with like Shane Douglas and people like, don't let him in here. There was some dust up or somebody got mad about something and Scott's like, yeah, you're right, I was a dick, sorry. Like, and they just let him come in and wrestle, because when somebody just goes, yeah, fucked up, sorry, it's amazing what an apology can do, even if you don't even mean it.
How little does that happen in the world of wrestling where everyone's ego is just running wild?
That's why it works. Because if you just because if you apologize, like, well, I wasn't expecting that. And guess what? Here's the shock. You don't have to mean it. Mm-hmm. You just have to say, hey, sorry, I was a dick, and then move on. You can do atrocious things in wrestling, but if you just apologize for it, people will just accept that because they don't hear that. Because everybody wants to fight and be hard-headed and say, I'm going to kick your ass. But if somebody comes to you like that, I'm like, hey, man, sorry, I was a dick. Boom. Move. Forgotten. Never happened.
Yeah, if the Elite would just apologize to CM Punk, we'd be able to make some money. Am I right?
I plead the fifth. How about that?
I am not going to make you self-incriminate yourself here, Jake. That's fine. I've bought money to Tony Khan's events. I'm allowed to voice my opinion.
To quote Mark Furman, I plead the fifth. I never thought I'd be in front of a microphone and be like, to quote Mark Furman.
Scott's off again until March of 2001 when he worked for New Japan Pro Wrestling out of Japan. There he was part of the T2000 stable, which funny enough stemmed out of NWO Japan, which stemmed out of NWO.
He was the coolest guy on the planet, and he had got himself back into shape, and he looks incredible. I think he had like some coffee energy drink sponsorship, and he would drink those, and they were like these small little cans before matches. So he had some sort of sponsorship. Also, too, he had like the dripping blood, like kind of the red and black vests, and had Hall written right on the butt. Like, he just was the coolest guy ever, and he came out to the Fugees, ready or not.
Yeah.
That was the coolest entrance in the world. Yeah. Like, the Fugees, ready or not. Here I come. You better hide. I'm gonna run.
And Scott's strutting out to it.
It's so good. And he goes in, bumps like a champ for all of them. Gosh, that's just so amazing. Get your hands on the footage. Watch at least just the entrance. Incredible. So cool. So, I mean, just proof that he is the coolest person on the planet.
So Scott would hang out in Japan till September 01, with his last match being a Triple Crown title shot, losing to Muta. He'd be back in the States by early 2002 to rejoin the WWF for the first time since the curtain call back in 1996. On the January 24th, 2002 episode of SmackDown, Vince McMahon said that he had a cancer that would infect the WWF with a lethal dose of poison. And aside from his booking over the next 20 years, he said it would be the NWO. Basically, they were doing this thing where Ric Flair like co-owned the WWF, obviously kayfabe. And Vince was like, I'd rather kill it than let Ric Flair own part of this.
Which actually, that angle got brought up in Ric Flair's deposition.
That's fucked up.
With High Spots, because we were going on and trying to prove things online. Like we were basically trying to provoke Ric Flair. So like the lawyer that Michael from High Spots hired to litigate our case in this deposition about Ric Flair owing us $42,000. We were just basically reading his Wikipedia page and just pissing him off, just so that he could later self-incriminate himself. And they brought up the angle, like, at one point in time when you own the WWF, and Flair's like, that was an angle. That's a story take. Why are you bringing that up in the middle of this? And he was just, that's when we knew we had him. And that's when our lawyer was like, well, Rick, I have to go through everything because you tell me to Google. Because he kept the whole time as he's going through his career, Rick was going, just Google me. Just Google me. To which then the guy goes, well, when you own the WWF, and Rick flipped out like, I didn't know that was a storyline. Our lawyer was like, well, Rick, you just said for me to Google you, and clearly we have to clear out what's fact and what's fiction, Rick. That's all I'm trying to get to the bottom of. And at that moment in time, we had him, and then he self-incriminated himself and then signed the deposition, and that was the legal document that said that he offered up the NWA World title as collateral because we didn't have a piece of paper signed by Ric Flair, and now we did when he signed the deposition. So, because he was pissed off.
Excuse me, Mr. Flair. It says here you have an illegitimate son named Jay Lethal. Is that correct?
I said, Google me. Google me. Just Google me. Just Google me.
At February 17th, O2's No Way Out, Hall was back to open up the pay-per-view with Nash and Hogan. NWO gets a big old pop. Scott's "Hey Yo" gets a big old pop. And they do like this tongue-in-cheek promo about how excited and thankful they are to be in the WWF. I'm a big fan of the front half of the NWO WWE story too. Like I'm on board until I'm not.
That sounds like the short Amazon review for any WWE angle.
I'm on board until I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
3 stars.
Yeah, it was cool at first. It was really awesome. But I think the thing that killed it was that The Rock and Hulk at WrestleMania, and that getting the reaction it did, and us wanting to dip back into the Hulk Hogan nostalgia pool. Once that happened, NWO is dead. Everything here is pretty cool. I like how we built to it and got to things, but once you take Hulk out of it, it wasn't going to work.
So at No Way Out, especially for if you grew up in the 90s watching wrestling, there's so many cool moments. You get to see a backstage segment with Stone Cold and the NWO, and just to see them on screen at the same time is just fucking mind-blowing. Another awesome moment is the Rock promo with the NWO. And here, Tyler, this is where you get your goddamn meep meep. So it was a tear. And then finally, in the main event, Scott, Hulk, and Kev run out to attack Austin to make him lose to Jericho. And Scott Hall hits Stone Cold with a stunner. And they paint Stone Cold's back. And this is going to kick off Scott Hall's first big feud back in the company. The next night on Raw, a very angry Stone Cold calls out the NWO, who comes to the ramp, but they don't go in the ring. They just kind of do like a switcheroo. Stone Cold refuses to leave the ring, which eventually gets him arrested while the NWO heckles him. And then they're out to attack The Rock and to set up that match at WrestleMania 18. Scott and Nash hit the ring, and then Hogan hits The Rock in the back of his head with a fucking hammer. It's like incredibly violent for some reason. I don't know why. And then they hit The Rock's ambulance with an 18-wheeler. So, you know. The next SmackDown, the MWO is out reading a prepared statement apologizing for their actions, which is pretty funny. When Stone Cold hits the arena in a pickup truck, he kidnaps Scott Hall and tapes him to a chair in a walk-in cooler. He eventually moves Scott, hits him with a tire iron. I can't do it. Tire iron. Puts him in the back of the truck, drives him to the ring, beats the shit out of him, paints 316 on his back, so he got a little revenge. Then on the February 25th episode of Raw, Scott officially challenges Stone Cold to a Mania match, and for a little payback, they run out and smash Steve's knee with a cinder block.
Also, didn't they, like, Scott was taking that drug that if you have any alcohol, it makes you violently ill. I remember that being a thing in the whole kidnapping angle, is they were going to pour beer on him, and, like, any type of alcohol was going to make Scott sick. So, like, there was these big concerns, and everybody was adamant about him doing this, but it's like Scott the whole time, like, you can't do it. I'm going to get violently ill. You can't do that. And I don't know why they just didn't back off and be like, yeah, we can't make you do that. Maybe because they're not a publicly traded company. I don't know. So we can just treat everybody like circus animals. Where when we're a publicly traded company, we have to figure out a creative way to treat you like circus animals. Yeah, like I remember that being a whole thing, and that's been detailed many a times on many different podcasts. But I feel like in the midst of a Scott Hall episode, we should at least mention it and say that was pretty fucked up. That to me is worse than the whole pretending to be drunk in WC.
Yeah,
I agree
for
completely.
sure.
As soon as you get any type of pushback, that's when it needs to be like, all right, cool. He's not. We don't need to do that. And for this time frame too, Scott was in good shape.
Yeah, he still looked pretty good, yeah.
And you don't want, and that's the thing too, is it's also, I hate to do this because he's one of my favorite human beings of all time, but like, you know, Stone Cold's like, no, let's pour beer down his throat. And like, no, you got to do this. And then he's bitching about wrestling Hall on WrestleMania, not Hulk. And I get that Steve is growing through his own bumps on the roads, but for you to be like, oh, you're going to stick me in there with Hall. And then you like say, well, keep Kevin around in case Hall isn't like, if he's just going to be a fuck up and miss the match because he's, you know, out drinking and stuff like that. But then you're pouring booze in the midst of this angle. And he's like, hey, I'm on this drug that makes me violently ill. Like, please, can we not do this?
He's like, too bad, some bitch. You gonna drink this beer and you gonna like it. No, this is what you gonna do. You're gonna go out there and drink a beer. What? You gonna drink another beer? What? You gonna drink another beer? What? And then I'm gonna stomp a mud hole in you and walk it dry.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bad taste. It's also like very counter for him to say like, oh, I think he's gonna fuck up when you're basically put him in a situation where he could fuck up again.
Yeah.
I think we do look at Stone Cold through very rose-tinted glasses as a whole, and I'm glad you brought that up, that he's not on his best behavior here, and this is just very soon before he walks out and it takes his ball home, which, like, he's having beef with Vince. Fuck Vince. Fuck Vince. Fuck Brock. I don't like either of them. But, like, Stone Cold is not being extremely pious here. Stone Cold is not infallible in the whole landscape of wrestling. He's better than most, but, like, he had some slip-ups, especially around this time.
He's better now, too.
Yeah, 100%.
There's, like, 2 years where he has been self-admitted that he was not living the best and made the best decisions. But what you do, you just say, fucked up, I'm sorry. And then people are like, you apologize, then move on, we forgive you.
100%.
as we said before, the fact that anybody apologized in this business is a miracle unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
So on the way to WrestleMania 18, Scott stops by Raw to absolutely just decimate Spike Dudley. And then we get to WrestleMania 18, the greatest night in the history of our sport. Scott faces Stone Cold, and Scott didn't seem to be like very proud of this match. I thought it was great. Lots of ref bumps and Nash fuckery, but even that's really good and well done. Austin wins with 2 stunners, and Scott sells the second stunner like a just absolute maniac. I like this match.
Match is solid. It does feel a bit out of place, just because the NWO, them still going by the NWO after all the things we've just gone through, plus another year that we didn't even cover because Scott was gone, and it felt like a little bit of a nostalgia pop. Match is fine, but like what we said this a couple of episodes ago, that like sometimes the thing you miss out on that bumps it up a rating in your own eyes is like a compelling story. And I don't think this one was especially compelling to me. Like just the way that
it was quick.
Yeah,
and,
it was a means to a WrestleMania match.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Busting a cinder block over somebody's knees and compelling storytelling, Tyler? Like, get the fuck out of here. Have you not been paying attention to WWF over the years?
No, compelling is
WWE?
Kane hooking up 2 jumper cables to Shane McMahon's nuts. That's compelling.
Okay. Just over the top violence. Is that not enough storytelling for you? And trust me, we never finished the story at WWE.
Later that night, Rock and Hulk face off, which is legitimately one of my favorite matches ever. Hogan loses, and as Jake touched on, he shakes The Rock's hand, turning full-blown babyface, so essentially, NWO is fucked. At the very least, they're about to change, they turn on Hulk, and then the next SmackDown on my birthday, March 21st, 02, Hall is out to support Nash, who's facing The Rock in the main event. Face Hogan comes out to attack Nash. Hulkamania is running wild, leg dropping the Outsiders when X-Pac runs in and NWO colors. And now the NWO clique is together. The next big stop would be Backlash, where Scott beat Bradshaw with some X-Pac interference. On the next Raw, Hall and X-Pac beat Austin and Big Show, when Big Show chokeslammed Austin and joined the NWO for a record 900th time across 2 promotions. And then we get to the
Plane ride from hell.
which was actually the plane ride from London.
Plane ride from London.
Can't wait for my plane ride from London and see how that goes.
Is everyone flying together over there?
I go over earlier. I imagine I'm coming back about the same time because of where the airport we're all flying out of to go to there. And I think some people are going straight from Atlanta to the UK. So we'll see. I will probably have some people on there, and we'll all be flying commercial. I'll keep you updated on my plane ride from hell.
Yeah, don't pass out.
Yeah, have Tony play the roster, this Dark Side of the Ring, like a fucking one of those videos when you start a restaurant job and they're like, it's a video where you're like, hey, don't fuck your coworkers, or still Tony's got to show him this.
No, fuck that. I want you to watch the plane ride from hell, Dark Side of the Ring with Tony and hype him up to be more like Vince. Tell Tony he needs to be more like Vince. Get more hands-on with the talent. Challenge him to more fights. Try to get him to take down Will Hobbs while on the flight.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Will Hobbs.
Preston Vance.
Who would he take? Yeah, I could see those two. Like, I bet I can take you down. Or it would be John Silver trying to single leg.
He's hanging onto somebody's leg while they're trying to shake him off like a cartoon.
This is definitely a John Silver, Will Hobbs situation. They would fulfill the Lesnar and Kurt Hennig. I'm trying to think who is going to play the role of Michael Hayes, like loudly, who like gets his hair cut, and he's like got his ponytail cut off, and just getting drunk and singing on the microphone.
Tony Schiavone?
Yeah, I could see Tony Schiavone trying and serenading people. I could see that happening. Dustin's gonna still be Dustin.
Yep.
So
is he gonna be getting back on the thing to talk about how much he loves his current woman?
Yeah, probably.
Good.
Probably.
Who's gonna be Ric Flair and walk around with their Jumbo Saruta out?
Like Orange Cassidy.
Yes, Orange Cassidy is going to be a sexual aggressor and wear nothing but a denim jacket.
He goes up to the flight attendant. He's like, "You can touch it or not. I don't care."
Yeah, it's whatever. Instead of helicoptering it, it just kind of like moves up slightly.
It shrugs.
Like just a little shrug. Like as all men know it does. Like you can make there's one little move and that's it. That's all you get. Who is the Scott Hall of it all?
Who takes the downfall despite not having done anything?
Oh, he does something. He does. Who would be the Scott Hall on AEW's roster?
Jeff Hardy's the Scott Hall of
AEW's roster. I don't want it to be Jeff Hardy. Let's stop playing this game. It just gets hard.
No, that was the thing I got partway through, and I was like, "Oh, which one of them are actually problematic?" I'm like, "That's the wrong way to think about it. You got to do a joke one. Gotta do a joke one."
That's why Orange Cassidy is the best part of that.
Exactly.
All right, so if you don't know the plane ride from hell, a lot of bad shit happens when they're flying a plane. Watch a fucking YouTube. But what we will get to real quick is that just to have a bit of a giggle, the guys were performing a silly little goof, a lighthearted prank where they were putting Halcyon in the drinks of unknowing drinkers. Halcyon, a sleeping pill with side effects including impaired memory, judgment, and coordination. That's how Michael Hayes got his hair chopped off by X-Pac. But Scott, he thinks he got H-bombed. He was so bad that people thought he was dead when they landed. He had to be like wheeled out in a wheelchair by Just Incredible. But Scott has his own regrettable action during this flight. So I don't want to frame this like I'm making a sort of excuse for what he did. But he was woken up by one of the flight attendants. He's in a daze. He's possibly H-bombed. He's blackout drunk. He grabs her by the shirt, which is fucking terrifying and traumatic by itself. But he says he wants to do some sex stuff. He says he is going to lick her or does lick her. It depends who's telling the story. But yeah, this is obviously traumatic for the flight attendant. But then Scott just passes right back out. So definitely not as bad as Ric Flair, but also it's not a great look on Scott. And once again, his demons are going to reach right out and fuck up his career. For his role in this shitstorm, mixed with the rote life clearly not working out with Scott, Scott's fired from the WWE. The bad guy popped back up about a month later in NWA's TNA. Back when I think you could only watch it on pay-per-view, I think was the shtick.
I think it was
weekly pay-per-views.
Yeah, I think it was their first pay-per-view that he was on too.
Yeah, literally, it's TNA 1, so that's fucking crazy. He's part of a battle royal won by Shamrock and Malice. He's not here too long, so just bullet points. July 31st, he lost to Jeff Jarrett in a stretcher match. He has a Battle Royal September 18th, 02 that has Brian Lawler and Jimmy Rave in it. So that's just like half our season. And then October 30th, he has a NWA World title shot. He lost to Ron Killings.
So you can find, I think, only one match, and it's Scott Hall versus Jeff Jarrett. It's before the stretcher match. It's in June.
Okay.
And just a little bit of time between that WrestleMania match and this match, you can tell that he is not doing that well. Like, his life of partying's catching up to him. He's bloating up a little bit. And here he just looks tired. And this is 2002.
Yeah. From here, looks like Scott took a few dates in Puerto Rico before taking a good bit of time off. We jump all the way up to February 2004 when at a UPW Overload event, the Outsiders had a little reunion before Scott with Big Kev would go back to TNA, and Scott beat AJ Styles November 23rd, 04, which was now TNA Impact TV. He wrapped up this run in TNA at January 16th, 05's Final Resolution, and it looks like Scott takes like 2 years off of wrestling. I think he wanted to retire around this point, but he said that like just sitting at home left to his own devices is just no good for him.
That's something I was thinking about earlier. You were talking about how good he was with his money, and I'm wondering why he doesn't just sit at home. And then it's like, oh, this guy has just wanted to wrestle for decades, and he's done it, and he's been good at it, and it's been like the driving force of his life, and he's wrestling in front of tens of thousands of people all the time. He's getting this rush, he's making this money, he's on the road, he's partying, he's sleeping with women. The dude is having what some would consider a very fun time, and then the alternative is to sit at home.
And also, too, the thing that was a reason for him just to be sober, like, well, I gotta wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only thing that's going to keep you, like, think that, like, well, I probably shouldn't have that beer, or I probably shouldn't have that drug because I got to go wrestle. If you're not wrestling, you don't have that thing that's going to tell you not to be inebriated. You take that out, and now it's your free time, and all you did with your free time is just get messed up.
Yeah.
And then you're just messed up all the time.
If you were a millionaire tomorrow, I know I definitely would, like, I don't know if I'd develop more of a problem than I have now. I definitely like overindulge in like food and stuff like that. Like, when you've won the game of capitalism, what really is there left to do? Especially when the thing that was driving your life is also partially killing you. It's saving you and killing you at the same time.
Make more episodes of 10 Bell Pod. That's what I do.
I would buy more Patrick Ewing cards. That's exactly what I would do.
See, we don't want much here.
Yeah, that's what I want.
I would buy every comedy club that's ever told me no and shut them down.
I have those same dark feelings. There was a point where I only was doing comedy because I wanted to get big enough to like shut down Comedy Zone. I swear to God. All right.
Talking about that. They loved me. They half loved me.
I was there earlier this month. Sorry, Nick. I don't know. It's we're the wolf pack here, I guess. Hollywood.
I actually turned them down more times than they offered me bookings.
Okay, you're the hall here, I think.
Scott was back in the game July of 07 for some more dates in Puerto Rico. He made his Juggalo Championship Wrestling debut August 12th, 07. So at least he's not going to get any drugs there. He'd be part of Bloody Mania. And he lost to JCW heavyweight champ Corporal Robinson.
I want to go to a Juggalo Championship Wrestling show so bad. Jake, you've been to one, haven't you?
I would go.
You've been to
He's worked?
Yeah.
I am a Gathering of the Juggalos veteran, and me, Zane Riley, and Caleb Connolly forged our friendship over a weekend at Gathering of the Juggalos, and they treated us tremendously. Now they don't treat the wrestlers as tremendously anymore, so it's not worth my time. They don't pay as well, so... Before, it was like super cool. We could be backstage and we were allowed to like see some really cool musical acts. Now they're like, go in at this time and you must talk to this person. If you don't talk to this person, they'll kick you out of the whole thing. And it's too much red tape. Who would have thought? Gathering the Juggalos, too much red tape.
Tell me the Juggalos sold out?
I think some wrestlers really ruined it for everybody. So, you know, I'm paying for it. But yeah, it is a interesting experience. I did wrestle there recently and it's just not the same anymore. It used to be cool. I did it when it was cool, but it is an experience.
If Hogan turned on WCW at the Gathering of the Juggalos,
Oh, they would have thrown everything at him. They would have tore the scaffolding down. It would have been Woodstock 99.
October 6th, 2007, Corporal Robinson, Scott Hall, and Violent J formed the Juggalo World Order. So why the fuck not? Hall seemed to take the majority of 08 off, stopping back by Bloody Mania 2 to team up with Big Sexy as he also joined the JWO. Not too much happens for him in 09, which brings us to 2010 TNA.
Fuck.
So TNA got together and was like, hey, you know how Russo, Bischoff, the overuse of like the same 5 people destroyed 53 years of NWA legacy in like, I don't know, 9 months? It's totally going to work this time.
Mm-hmm.
So January 4th, 2010, the first 3-hour Monday Night Live episode of
I watched it. I watched this live. Me and my grandpa watched this live. We had 2 televisions set up right next to each other, one with Monday Night Raw, one with TNA Impact, just in case, you know? Like
This was your Monday. No, hold
this
the
was
fuck
it.
on. Stop.
Yeah.
No. This was your Monday Night War.
Well, I knew. Listen. Okay. You ever seen?
You didn't experience. No. Fuck off. Fuck off. Stop
I'm
fucking
serious.
talking. You mean to tell me you were like, what?
No.
2 wrestling
No.
shows on a Monday
No, not
night?
at all.
This is insane. Never happened before. We gotta get 2 TVs set up. We might have to flip between channels.
You ever seen a schoolyard fight where there's like the big, like muscly dude that plays football? He's like 6'5", he's built. And like, you know, when he gets in a fight, he's pretty handy. You know what I mean? Like one of those stout little country dudes. And then you got like that one kid that won't shut the fuck up. And he's small and he's skinny. And like everybody's hyping him up to fight the big dude. That's what I felt like this was going to be. And that's absolutely what it was. Where it was like, oh man, what if the scrawny kid gets in a couple punches? And the first punch was what was it called? The Lethal Lockdown match where Homicide couldn't get out of the top of the thing. That was the first punch thrown out. I think that was on the first episode of TNA Impact on Monday nights. They took the 6-sided ring down to 4, and everything that was festering in WCW that hasn't been allowed to blow off steam for a decade just took a giant shit in TNA. Now, TNA was good for about a 6-month stretch between 2006 and 2007. And then Dixie Carter just started inserting every fantasy wrestler that she could get into it. Some of it was good. Parts of the Main Event Mafia I really enjoyed. But almost nobody here in the 2010 TNA was at the peak of their performance.
On the first ever Monday Night Live episode of Impact, Hall and Sean Waltman returned to TNA the same night Hulk Hogan made his historic TNA debut.
They had Rob Van Dam. That was cool. They got him. That was fucking sweet.
So from here, Scott's involved in angles and like run-ins, but he doesn't have his first actual match till March. On the March 15th episode of Impact, Hall defeats Nash in a 5-minute, $25,000 challenge with interference from X-Pac. Scott would spend the next couple of months getting matches on like a pretty regular basis. He and Six-Pac faced Eric Young and Nash at 2010 Destination X. So Hall and Sean had turned on Kevin, but now Kevin turned on Eric.
Mm-hmm. They sprayed some spray paint on him. Some of it was green because X-Pac was in DX. That's how you make new stars, baby.
Scott would have some steel cage matches. He did a New York street fight, which is just a normal wrestling match, but you constantly have to go, hey, I'm fucking fighting it. Hall and Nash picked up the tag title May 18th, 2010, but Hall was out of there around that time. He had some real life legal problems. I want to say this is like when the DUI and like public intoxication shit is popping up. But anyways, he gets released from TNA and he retired from pro wrestling.
You can catch a match in its entirety that is the band. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash are known as the band. You got to get the fucking band back together. And they took on the Dudleys, known at the time as Team 3D, in a steel cage match. It was all right. Some pretty fun spots to it.
So here's when they start getting bad for Scott. In 2010, Scott suffered congested heart failure and he started having seizures. He eventually had to get a pacemaker put in. And, Scott very obviously had problems with addiction, physical health, mental health. Scott had always had wrestling to fall back on, like Jake mentioned. He had that to look forward to. As he said on the Jake the Snake show, he always had his body for like a little self-esteem. But, he's aging. He's not taking care of himself. So he gets on this downward spiral of like self-hate, self-abuse, drugs, and alcohol. And he's literally trying to drink himself to death at this point. Like we mentioned, Scott went to rehab 12 times. He had a psych evaluation that said he suffered from negative self-esteem, which is fucking crazy to think about when you talk about Scott Hall. He's nothing but cool and confident and awesome. He still had that unchecked PTSD from the shooting. Also, Scott's parents and grandparents, full-blown alcoholics, so he has that rattling around in his genes. And then Scott gets his rock bottom filmed and uploaded to YouTube. All of this is documented in that E60 piece called The Wrestler. So on April 6, 2011, Scott went to the hospital for a seizure. 2 days later, he had a booking at an indie show with a company called Top Rope Promotions. And this is like top 3 most difficult, at least for me anyways, top 3 most difficult wrestling clips to watch like ever. First of all, Scott got off the plane in a wheelchair, still wearing his hospital bracelet. And the promoter is like, yes. To quote X-Pac, so you shove the guy out of the curtain so you don't have to give refunds. Fuck you. Scott's on so many somas and perks here that he's like not in his body. Scott can barely walk. He can barely talk. He can barely move. Despite that, Scott, who has the greatest punch in pro wrestling history, still threw a 10 for 10 punch in this state. He still looked fucking phenomenal. All this is so crushing because Scott's, like I said, he's known for being so cool, so tough. And to see someone you see as larger than life like that be so fucking vulnerable here, it's like truly heartbreaking. Like I said, they let him go out for a match, and that night Scott checked into a local hospital and was treated for an overdose. So that's the state he was in.
I remember seeing this E60 piece, and I actually know the promoter that was featured in this, and I agree with X-Pac. Like, hey, you didn't want to give fucking refunds, so push him out the curtain. But we also have to examine what Scott was doing at this time to people in the business. First of all, promoter should have never put him in the ring and pushed him out through the curtain. If he was in a wheelchair and he was very out of it, like, hey, Scott, can you do the meet and greet beforehand? And if it's going to be a terrible experience, just keep him in the back and don't deal with it. But if it's a situation of, Scott, can you at least interact with the fans? And, I'd like to give you this money. Are you coherent enough to have a conversation with the fans and write people's names? Can you at least write people's names? I get that maybe you can't get into a ring. Can you at least do that? But you also have to keep in mind at this time, Scott is doing a lot of bad business with people. Like, people are booking him and he's showing up in this condition. Or he's showing up and demanding a deposit. You get the deposit and he's like, fuck you, I got your money, and doesn't show up. He's doing a lot of bad business at this time. So the word's out and every promoter is sick of his shit. They're sick of him showing up inebriated when it's like, hey, I booked you to meet with these fans and you're drunk and you can't even sign their names. What the fuck is this? I'm paying you, all this money, and then you're rude to everybody in the building. Fans, staff, and everything. Or I booked you, you didn't even get on the fucking flight, but I had to pay for a deposit. Like, at this time, he did it to High Spots twice. At this moment in time, we were supposed to show up with some posters, have him sign it. He said, fuck you, I'm not going to fucking do it, when we already paid him. And I had drove all the way up to the Northeast to get him to sign these posters. The whole basis of me driving up there is to get him to sign these posters. And like halfway up, he said, fuck off. Thankfully, Nick's boy, X-Pac, was doing a convention a few hours away, so I just rerouted, went to X-Pac, and he was on the poster, so he signed his share of the posters, so it wasn't a wasted trip. And X-Pac even said, hey, what's one of the things about being in the clique? We got to cover for each other sometimes, and Scott's just not in his right mind. And that's who Scott Hall was at this time. So when the promoter's like, what do I do as a promoter? I paid him this money, and he showed up in this condition. Obviously, this was a health issue or not. Scott's track record at this time was, I take a bunch of pills and I fucking piss on your money that you spent. So I remember the piece, and the promoter's like, well, this is your problem now. You deal with it. And if you want to break people's hearts, if this is the first time they're seeing you and this is how you're going to act, go right the fuck ahead. Was that right? Absolutely not. That shouldn't have been done. But that gives you an idea of where Scott Hall's place in wrestling is at this moment. That's what makes this so heartbreaking. People in wrestling who loved you basically were like, fuck you. Go embarrass yourself. Scott has always done amazing work for professional wrestling. But because of everything he's got going on, because of his addiction, he has pissed all over it to a point that somebody and multiple people probably would have done the same, been like, go ahead, fucking embarrass yourself because you've embarrassed me for the last fucking time. That's what makes this heartbreaking. That's what makes it sad. That's what makes this instance rock bottom, is that people had completely and utterly washed their hands of him. That's how far down he is at this moment in time. And that's something that doesn't get detailed in this E6 story, but everybody in the business knows it. Nobody is working with him. People are fucking done with him. That's how far down he's gone. That's what makes this rock bottom.
That's a great assessment, Jake, and I think you did a really good job of explaining how, like, in the wrestling business, it is a business at the end of the day, and it's very sad, a lot of the stuff that was going on with Scott, and how it's in juxtaposition, too, of him having been such a fantastic character and, like, so great to work with and such a great mind in the business, to now hit this. But on a lot of these indie shows, too, he's probably the biggest name on there by a long shot, and he is affecting people's livelihood by pulling some of this. Yeah. And it's very sad that addiction can get to that point, but that is often when, like, it's a wake-up call that people are having their personal demons, their addictions affect not only their personal life, but, you know, lives of people around them. And that is the final wake-up call where it's like, hey, man, your problem has gotten so big, it's fucking up other people's lives. And I agree, wasn't the right move for him to be sent out there. Scarily a parallel to something I think that happened the same year with Jeff Hardy and TNA. And it's so sad to see wrestlers that are struggling through things like that in a public way, in a literal public arena. And I wonder, it's not always going to work as being a wake-up call, but sometimes it does. So I guess in a way, I don't know what the intentions were. It's really 50-50 whether or not it was like, hey, everybody needs to see how bad off Scott is, or whether it was, like you said, like, go fucking embarrass yourself. But it had to come to a head in some way.
A guy who helped so many people, made people look good, a guy who stopped everything to help out Sean Waltman. Now he's in a point that his addiction's so strong that he's fucking other people's lives and pushing people down. That's where he is. That's where he is at this moment in time.
Yeah, and I think there's a phrase, something along the lines of hate the addiction, not the addicted, something along those lines. I don't think this is who Scott is. It's just this is where he was pulled down to. And I think our understanding of addiction and mental health, even, what is this, only 12 years ago, was way different. It's a lot easier, especially during this time, to be like, oh, what a piece of shit, fuck him. I think now maybe it would be handled a little different. I don't know. Yeah, this is a very horrible situation for all involved. But Scott was never in denial about his issues. He'd go to rehab. He'd play ball. The 12-step stuff just never worked for him. It does for some people, and that's awesome. I think that is one of the bright spots of religion in general. If you can use it to make your life better and you're not hurting anyone else, good. For other people, all they hear is God says don't drink. And they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll try that. I'll try to not drink when, you know, they have an actual disease. So there's the rehab trips, well documented. There's the plane ride from hell story bouncing around. There's that brutal 2011 video, the stories of Scott drinking himself to death, possibly suicidal. And every single sign points it to this just being another story of a guy who got ate by the industry. But then, longtime friend Diamond Dallas Page reached out to him. As a lot of people know, in August of 2012, Dallas started working with Jake the Snake Roberts. They filmed it, turned it into the resurrection of Jake the Snake. And while it was definitely not a straight line to recovery, it was working for Jake. So about 15 weeks into that, they reached out to Scott.
I remember the video. It was very early social media where like after like Jake had finally got good footing, and the fact that he turned Jake around was miraculous. But I remember like Diamond Dallas Page, like, we need to go reach out to a friend and a brother and help him out. And like they were kind of teasing it. And I'm like, who are they going to help? And I was kind of thinking like someone like a Sabu or Jim Neidhart or something like that. And then he goes, hey, Scott. And I'm like, Scott Hall? Oh, that's not going to fucking work at all. I was like, no. You could get Jake the Snake correct, but you're not getting Scott Hall corrected. Once again, to paint how bad it was. But the magic of Diamond Dallas Page, but at the same time, too, like, what Page did wouldn't work if Page wasn't who he is, but also doesn't have that long-standing relationship. If he was just some inspirational yoga guy, this wouldn't have worked. The fact that Dallas is like, hey, I sat in the same exact chair. Or I sat shotgun with you. I was next to you in the locker room. I rode the same roads. I drove the same miles. I took the same bumps. And you're this way. And if you look at this guy over here and Jake, he got it straight. And we all know how bad he was. You can do this. This is possible. That you can turn this all around. You can't bullshit me because I know where you've been. I know what you've done. I was there. I saw it. Get your shit together. That's why this works. That's the only way this would have worked. And thankfully he did.
Scott, who showed up in a wheelchair, would walk out of DDP's, just completely changed, different man. And I say that with sort of an asterisk. I know from friends in stand-up comedy, family, from Scott Hall's story, the road of addiction, recovery, and sobriety, it's not always a off switch that you click in therapy one day. Like, it's a roller coaster sometimes. You have long periods of sobriety, you fall down, you relapse, and then you get sober again, and then you relapse. And I think Scott does do that a little bit through the rest of his life. But at this point, like I said, Scott always played ball in rehab, and this was no different. He shows up old, beaten, overweight, just a shell of himself. And then like 3 scenes later in the documentary, he's just strutting by 50 pounds lighter, like whistling and tan, like nothing ever fucking happened. Like, he clearly showed up serious about this, put in the work, and he got his second act that we always talk about.
Well, and he probably found a compromise with all that, much like I feel like with my alcohol issues, I had to find a compromise with it. Like I said, no drinking on the road, but if I'm riding bikes, I can have a beer or two with my girlfriend. But, you know, I got to make sure that I stop drinking 2 hours before I get behind the wheel. You know, like these hard, fast rules of like, I can have a drink here. I'm not allowed to drink here. I can't drink here. Finding some structure to it, because it's been a coping mechanism for now over half my life. So that's a thing. But the important thing is that I also worked on the issues that caused me to drink. That's ultimately, when you have addiction problems, you work on the problems that pushed you to this particular vice or drug or alcohol or whatever. You work on those problems. And for the most part, I think he did. But, you know, he may have dabbled, and then, of course, that gets out of control. But you have the tools to correct yourself and put yourself on a path. At this moment in time, I know a lot more people were using him very cautiously, but he was very much full of life. He was very positive. He would gladly tell the same stories over and over again about how he pitched Razor Ramon to Vince, and Vince never saw Scarface. Like, he was always willing to tell the stories that fans wants to hear time and time and time again. He would say it with the same sense of joyfulness as if he's telling the story for the first time, because it's for your first time hearing it from his lips. And he was fantastic with that, and people that booked appearances with him. And he'd even like put the sport coat that was very similar to the dripping blood trunks he had. He had a sport coat like that and do appearances like that, and made sure he had like a Click shirt on and had him for sale. Take a big picture, come in here, get close. And all of that stuff he didn't do when he had hit rock bottom, he flipped it on his head. He reversed it, and he became a tremendous guy to book for a convention, a meet and greet, and an appearance, because he made every one of those fans feel special that paid money to see Scott Hall.
It's cool to see the work that DDP can do. And I think he's only able to get through to some of these people the way that he's been able to because of him coming at it from the point of view of, I've also been in this industry. I know how hard these things are. I have a firsthand experience with it. Look at Jake. Look at the things he's gone through and how he's able to come up from, like, how similar their rock bottoms were is so strangely coincidental. And then to have both of them saved by DDP is awesome to see, and see someone come back from such a low point that if DDP wasn't around, like, he would have died just a few years later.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's great that Diamond's been able to come in and help some people and give back to the business the way that he has.
Yeah, he's like the only pure thing that's ever come out of this industry.
Mick Foley
is DDP and Mick Foley.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, touche. All right, so yeah, from rock bottom to recovery. By March 24th, 2014, Scott would be a WWE Hall of Famer. And, through the shit, WWE distanced themselves, as they do with anyone who's really controversial at the time when it comes to the Hall of Fame. And I know we can go back and forth on the legitimacy of the WWE Hall of Fame. Does it matter? Yada, yada, yada. But without Scott Hall in it, no one else's Hall of Fame matters, because it's a fucking joke without Scott Hall in it. But they finally did the right thing. They put Scott in, who was inducted in New Orleans on April 5th, 2014, the night before WrestleMania 30. He was, of course, inducted by Kevin Nash, and Scott has one of the great Hall of Fame speeches. He keeps it short and sweet, which I always appreciate with these things. And he also delivered the iconic line, "Hard work pays off, dreams come true, bad times don't last, but bad guys do."
Which he regretted at every appearance he ever did, because when people wanted inscriptions, people wanted that entire line. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do. They wanted that whole thing, and he's like, fuck, I just want to sign Scott Hall and call it a day. maybe put Scott Hall, NWO, or Razor Ramon, like the inscription, like that was like a whole thing. And it got to a point like, I'm not writing it, okay? Don't, what you want, I'm not writing it. And when he showed up to High Spots for the virtual gimmick table, he's like, Michael did this and put him in a bad spot, put him on camera and said, on camera, will you at least do this once? Because everybody wanted it. Everyone wanted that inscription. And we said, he's not doing it. But then we said, all right, Scott, can you just do it one time on this one poster, and we're going to auction it off. So anybody that's wanted this inscription on this poster, here's your one opportunity and only opportunity. He wrote it on camera. So we kind of put him on the spot, but he insisted he wasn't going to do it. But we put him on the spot, and he did it, and we auctioned it off. Of course, that was during COVID. And of course, a guy who would take any amount of alcohol and do all kinds of wild stuff, he was very insistent upon we take the highest of protocols. Everybody masked up. I made sure that I showed him my COVID test results. We still were on camera together, masked up. He had gloves on. He was very particular. He brought his own food to the office, which he left behind, and I ended up eating afterwards. I stole Scott Hall's dinner, but we got him some other food.
Wait, what did he bring? I'm curious.
Ground turkey, vegetables, and mashed potatoes. Very wholesome.
Yeah.
Very wholesome. Nice little meal brought with. Just was going to put it in the microwave, but he left it behind. I've scooped it up and I ate it because it was 11 o'clock at night, and does anybody remember, during COVID, everything closed at 10 o'clock. So if you worked late like I did, you were shit out of luck for food. So thanks for Scott for feeding me that night. But super cool, tremendous to work with. He signed everything he agreed upon. Was a pleasure to do business with. So much, in fact, we did a private signing with him, and he was great to be around. And by that time, like, he was fine with taking the mask off, because we once again showed all of our test results. I'm like, yeah, I've been around you guys. You guys are fine, and you're cool, and you're good. So he was a pleasure to be around. The complete opposite of what I just described earlier at rock bottom. So just was a joy to be around. And that's who I remember. And I'm glad I got to know that Scott Hall, and not the Scott Hall that existed in 2011.
It's funny to think about that he is so pro COVID protocol, because he's like, I did not spend 2 fucking months with DDP and give up my favorite
I
fucking
think he
vices.
said that. I think that's what he said. He goes, I did all this fucking work to like stay alive. I'm not gonna get COVID to get me. Like, I think he said that, if I'm not mistaken. That was his whole thought process. I'm like, I'm an older dude. I'm not letting this flu get me.
Scott has some pretty like random WWE appearances. He pops up on a 2014 Raw with the NWO for Hulk Hogan's birthday. He's on a 2015 Raw where he joins up with X-Pac and Nash with APA and New Age Outlaws to beat up the Ascension. WrestleMania 31, March of 2015. Hall with Nash and Hogan ran out to help Sting during his match with Triple H, who had DX on his side. And I marked out like a little bitch who is also a hoe for all of this. Ideally this happens in 01, 02, but goddamn it, I hate myself for how much I love WrestleMania 31.
Ah, that's who it was
That's
for.
okay.
Okay.
But don't worry, you were definitely a hoe when Triple H fucked you and went over. So he definitely fucked you then.
That was the whole
was
point. Okay. It was telling the story of, it was like a metaphor for the WCW WWE battle. Sting, it was Triple H, both of the company's guys, most loyal guys. There's the back and forth. The NWO comes out. They have the upper hand against DX, yada, yada, yada. And then finally, with a last-ditch effort of hitting Sting with the sledgehammer, WWE wins the Monday Night War.
Oh, so they finished telling the story. I thought they didn't finish telling stories in the WWE.
Only when Triple H goes
sorry.
over, that's when the story's done.
Oh, okay, that's when the story's ending. Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
That's
you,
why we
Tyler,
never
for
saw
clarifying.
Scott Steiner after that match.
Let's jump over to 2016 when Scott wrestled his last match ever, beating Chuck Taylor for the DDP Iron Man Heavyweight Championship at First Wrestling in Des Moines, Iowa. Were you there, Jake? I assume you're at everything in Iowa.
No, I didn't even know Eric Cannon ran Des Moines, to be quite honest. He's mostly in Minneapolis. I didn't realize he had an Iowa show, and he didn't book me on it. Now I'm mad at him. But also, too, I need to talk to Chuck Taylor. I'm like, you were Scott Hall's last match? I got to talk to him about it, because I was Kamala's last match.
Oh,
So-
did we talk about that on the Kamala?
Yeah, I think we did. I think I was definitely Skandar Akbar's last match, because he died like a few days
Oh,
afterwards.
jeez.
And I might have been Kamala's last match. I think I'm thinking of Skandar Akbar.
Okay.
I was definitely somebody's last match as well too. So yeah.
Can you give Chuck Taylor $20 and record his thoughts on being? We could put it on.
Yeah, I'll throw $20 in on that too.
It'll be unimpressive, no matter how much money I give him. Trust me. Look at his AEW contract and the work he puts out. Money is not a motivator from that man.
Scott was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame for the second time as a member of the NWO as part of the class of 2020. Then we get to the tough spot. So in March 2022, Scott was hospitalized after slipping on a piece of ice and falling and breaking his hip, which, definitely sucks, but you get a hip replacement, you take a few months to heal, and you're usually fine. But then in just one of those freak fucking occurrences, a blood clot was dislodged, and it caused Scott to have 3 heart attacks on March 12th. After that, he had to be put on life support. He was taken off life support March 14th after his family had traveled to be with the members of the clique all called in to, say bye. And surrounded by his loved ones, though, the great Scott Hall passed away at the age of 63. So I guess final thoughts on Scott Hall.
Scott, I think, had more influence in wrestling than I realized. Just as somebody who came up with WWE's spoon-fed retelling of the Monday Night Wars, that they went over there, they caused havoc, it was no big deal. But it's so cool to hear him bring up so many guys, help out so many people over the years. And one thing that we haven't touched on, he also has a son that is wrestling today in New Japan. Member of Bullet Club stables, Cody, 31, so he's carrying on his dad's legacy. But Scott Hall is a wonderful performer, and obviously not having lived through most of his career, I didn't experience a lot of it in real time aside from the TNA stuff. But it was cool to go back and rewatch some things and really see how cool of a worker he was. And it's sad that he's had personal problems that have followed him all the way from his early life, like before he got into wrestling with the shooting, and how that followed him all the way through to his problems later in life. Bad and good, because he was able to pull himself out of it. But I think it's fair to say Scott Hall is a wrestler that has seen basically every way you can turn the Rubik's Cube of professional wrestling. He's seen the good, he's seen the bad, he's made money, he's had problems, he's gotten sober, he's in the Hall of Fame, he's done it all.
Like I said before, I saw what rock bottom looked like as somebody that was staff and directly involved with promoters that tried to book him. And for all intents and purposes, we thought that's how the Scott Hall story was going to end. But he got a second chance. He actually got a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a 12th, and a 15th. But it stuck. He figured it out. And he left a lot of good memories in people's minds. And a lot of people that had bad memories of him, those were replaced with the good memories that he left behind, including an incredible body of work that took 3 episodes to cover. When Nick said that we were going to do 3 episodes of this, I was like, are you sure? But as I sit here now at 2 hours plus on episode 3, which I thought would be an hour and a half tops, yeah, he had a very lengthy, prolific career that influenced my childhood and many other people's childhood now. I think a lot of people have gone back and experienced and seen Razor Ramon and saw how cool that is and how amazing that is and how incredible he was as a wrestler and a performer. I mean, really just second to none. I can't think of too many people. Like, there's many times where I've brought something up to Nick on this podcast and we just stopped everything. Yeah, that was cool. Or, oh, that was amazing. Or remember how awesome that was? And those are most of my fond childhood memories, and they're all involve Scott Hall. And I'm thankful that I got my time with him on the virtual gimmick table and got to see the good Scott Hall. Not the Scott Hall I met in 2011. I got to meet the real Scott Hall. The Scott Hall that unfortunately is no longer with us, but gosh, we are so blessed to have been around him and enjoy his career.
Yeah, this one hurt. I think people don't watch wrestling or don't follow it as close as, some more consistent fans. One thing they don't understand is how long we spend with these people. It's very easy to cry over someone who dies in a TV show or something. I've spent my whole life watching Scott Hall. He was so much of my wrestling fandom. I loved Razor as a kid. The NWO from the time Scott jumped the guardrail to Starrcade 97 is the greatest wrestling angle ever to me. But I really remember rediscovering him and really appreciating him when I got the WWE Network in 15-ish, 16-ish. I did this thing where I watched like every TV and pay-per-view until 99, and then I gave up. But the start of Raw is prime Razor years. And I remember him always being good, but watching him back step by step, I was just so blown away at how underrated he is. Scott never had a bad match. He never had a weak promo. He was not a perfect person, but goddamn, he was as close to a perfect wrestler as you can possibly be. He gets so much love for NWO and Razor that I think people forget how brilliant of an actual just in the ring pro wrestler he was. The way he sold was this perfect mix of real but also comedy. His offense, it was all so cool. And a million people have said, greatest punch ever. Great talker. I told Jake and Tyler this when I listen to podcasts or shoots. I usually play video games or work out or whatever. I was an hour and 40 minutes into Scott's shoot when I realized, wait, am I just watching this guy sit in a fucking chair? That's how captivating Scott Hall was. The way he approached wrestling was so smart. He always wanted to make his match, his segment, the best it could be. For all the shit the Clique gets, Scott was always willing to sell for people. He was willing to put people over, even when The Office was telling him not to. you know, he wanted to give back to the industry when his years were done. And those kind of people, as I've learned, what is this, episode 85? Those kind of people don't make it to the top. But he did. And as someone who's watched pro wrestling for like the last 30 years now, who has like dug around in pro wrestling for the last 5 years doing this show, you don't get a more complete wrestler than Scott Hall. And there's no replacing him, but as long as pro wrestling will be around, so will the name Scott Hall. All right. That is the great Scott Hall's 10 Bell Pod, and that is a wrap for season 3. Thanks everyone for coming back and supporting. I think this is like the most active our social media has ever been. Thanks for everyone contributing to the Patreon. Assuming nothing too crazy pops up with Jake or Tyler, I promise we're going to squeeze in a fall season this year. I'm going to take the rest of June off and get right back to it. But yeah, thank you for supporting the show any way you do. Jake, Tyler.
Yeah, we're going to keep up the Patreon stuff in the off season. We're going to do our best to. I think we already have a couple of fun ideas we've been throwing around. There's some shit that Nick sends us on our off time that I'm very interested to see where that goes. And yeah, other than that, thank you guys so much for supporting us this season. If you could rate and review the podcast and drop any suggestions of things you would want to see in the off season. What you got, Jake?
Make sure you leave a review. That is important, especially in the off season. But most importantly, leave a verbal review with your friend. Word of mouth. Let them know, like, hey, they've got 3 seasons already available that you can listen to, and there's time to catch up. We do the season process because things get very busy with us. I'm hoping the fall won't be as busy, that we'll be able to get everything going. But in the meantime, I thoroughly enjoy getting Tyler completely sauced up and him recollect what I made him cram when it comes to professional wrestling history. So you'll probably see more drunk professional wrestling histories. Maybe even on the main feed, but definitely all of the Patreon people, you know what all the fun's about. So I appreciate you contributing to that and enjoying the goodness that is that. And I look forward to doing more of those in the in-between time. So we're going to be a bit more active during that time to not leave you guys, on radio silence. We'll text you back for sure.
All right. Shit, I never know how to end an episode. I definitely don't know how to end a season. Fucking see ya in a few months.
All that great writing for every other piece and just the dismount. You're like, okay.